Welcome to That's Inclusive, where we talk about disability and what it means to live a full life engaging in our communities. What does that look like, and how can we work together to make our world a more inclusive place?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of That's Inclusive from the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities. I'm your host for today, Pat Vincent Pierce. And before we get started, I'd like to make an announcement about the New Hampshire Caregiver Conference that's coming up in November on the 8th from 8 to 4. That's a Wednesday. It will be at the Good Pony Center in Concord, New Hampshire. They're having a great keynote speaker this year. Her name is Becky Rule. She's a comedic storyteller. She's going to be... Her presentation is called "We Cried So Hard We Laughed, Stories from New Hampshire Caregivers." I've been to the conference before. It's such a great opportunity to meet other caregivers and share ideas, commiserate a little bit, and it's just so healing to spend time around people who just get it. So if you are a caregiver and you have an opportunity, please join us November 8th from 8 to 4 at the Good Pony Conference Center in Concord, New Hampshire. And today I am fortunate to have with me Sarah Sadowski. She's a member of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities. She's the project director for New Hampshire Leadership, which is with the Institute on Disability, and the focus of our podcast today. She is a caregiver for her daughter who has a disability, and as most of you know, I am also a caregiver. So we're going to spend some time talking about family caregiving and the ups and downs and the sweet surprises and all that great stuff. So welcome, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Pat. Happy to be here.
I am taking off my headset right now because I hate hearing my own voice. So why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your role?
Sure thing. So my name is Sarah Sadowski, as Pat said, and I live here in Concord, New Hampshire, with my husband and our 4 kids, and they're ages 8 to 14. And our oldest has cerebral palsy and epilepsy, and we're really thankful that her health is currently pretty stable, which is wonderful. She'll actually be a freshman here at Concord High next year, which is wonderful to be in the Concord High recording studio space. She's at camp with a friend today. And we're really fortunate to have a great team around her, but I know that's not the case for every family, and being her mom has really opened my eyes to the caregiving crisis here in our state. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you. So a lot of the questions that I had lined up for you, you've already shared. When we had met before, the big thing that struck me was when you told me about the story of her hospitalization and your experience with other families at the hospital. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Sure. Well, my daughter is very susceptible to respiratory infections, and unfortunately, sadly, when we land in the hospital, that's often what lands us there. And so we've had several NICU, PICU stays, and that's the intensive care unit up at Dartmouth and also at Children's. She's been a frequent flyer in both those places, sadly. And one of the things that I'm so struck by when I am overnight at the hospital with her is how few children are actually accompanied by their caregiver. And so it just breaks my heart wide open that in this state, we often have kids going through medical experiences alone. And that's just really sad. You know, I mean, parents come in when they can, but often we know the majority of all children in New Hampshire have both earners in the workforce. If they're in a 2-person household, they have all available earners in the workforce, I should say. And yet we don't have any, the paid leave is lagging behind. My friend Amanda Sears at Civic Strategy Group says, leave it to beaver policies in a modern family era, really and to live that experience being in the hospital with Angelina and to feel my own family struggle with, who goes back to work, who works, luckily we were able to sometimes work bedside, but then you are torn because, you have deadlines at work that don't just pause and you want to get your job done, but you also want to be there and care for your child. So I am all about the cultural changes that we need to have happen so that more children especially can be supported by their loved ones. But that's something that everyone deserves.
Right.
In our moments of sickness and vulnerability, we depend on those around us. We all will. And so making sure those systems are really robust is important to me.
Right. I mean, as a caregiver for an adult, our experience has been that if someone goes into the hospital, Medicaid can no longer pay for the hours for a caregiver, and it's not like the staff at the hospital. I mean, like we were just talking about, you were saying Dartmouth is down 1,200 employees, 1,200 staffers. So even if they knew how to care for someone who needed help with activities of daily living, which they don't because that's not part of their training, there's not nearly enough people to do it. So, yeah, hospital experiences with people with disabilities is not good. You were saying that you have a good team around your daughter right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the team?
Sure. I mean, it's been years in the making. We are very fortunate in that we met an incredible nurse. Gosh, it's been 7 years now that she's been with our family.
Wow.
And without her support, I simply could not work. Part of the way epilepsy manifests in our family is a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of nights where it can be hard. Thankfully it's less so at this point, but our nurse is still there to make sure, if there's any kind of care that needs to happen in the middle of the night, particularly something like vomiting or being sick to your stomach, like you should not be alone when that stuff happens. No. And it's really important that we have somebody who can administer the medications that she needs and be there if something goes wrong. So yeah, we're really fortunate that we met a real unicorn of a nurse.
Yes, you did.
And she's the one who makes it all possible. So that being said, so we have night nursing 5 nights a week at our place. And then in addition to that, we have folks who do support our daughter in the community. I actually testified about this with my personal hat on at the state budget hearings this year about, this workforce issue is something we have to get our arms around because this is just not a tenable situation where the workforce shortage is such that if we want to support our community members being out and about, as they should be, as they have a right to live in their communities like anyone else, we need to invest in our workforce. Right. And I'm very grateful. There's a program right now where some caregivers can get compensated for a portion of the care they provide. But at the end of the day, my daughter's 14. She doesn't want my husband or I hanging out with her while she's going out with her friends to the movies or doing things that, she went to my middle school dance, for example. She doesn't want my husband hanging in the shadows.
No, I can imagine.
And so, no matter how much we asked to chaperone, she politely declined. And
politely? Well, you get politely? I don't remember politely at 13 or 14.
It's so true. It's so true. But she went with a friend, and we were able to have someone there who was a chaperone who was able to be responsible for, if anything went south. Because in our family, we always plan for, what's the worst case scenario that could happen, and we need to center personal safety, right? So because our child uses a wheelchair and uses an eye gaze to communicate, and because the eye gaze is really fatiguing at this point, she doesn't always have it with her. At this point, she really prefers, blinks. Angelina will blink in the affirmative instead of saying, using her Toby, for example. Okay. And so, yes, so the caregiver issue, wow, I hadn't heard that stat about Dartmouth, but I'm sadly not surprised. I mean, this trend of workforce issue continues to be just said, I mean, you and I were both at the family support conference this weekend, and hearing that there's not a wait list, but there's a caregiver crisis, like the hours that you get don't matter if you can't fill them.
Right. Well, and I would, one thing that I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking about this, is the emotional intelligence it requires for someone to be a caregiver, to walk those lines between making sure someone's safe and that they have control over their own life, and between families, even if the person doesn't have a guardian, they have family members who want to be involved in one way or another. And so we're asking people to take on this really delicate balance that requires a lot of emotional intelligence for $11 an hour. I mean, this is a hard job. This is and it takes a lot, and we need to recognize DSPs and PTAs and other paid caregivers as true professionals who are skilled. It's a skilled position. I think we look at it as regular labor, like working in a fast food joint, but it's not. It's a skilled position, and we need to pay accordingly. And I really appreciate right now all the people who have these amazing skills and are not being paid, but are staying anyway. But we can't continue to ask that indefinitely, not if we want quality care.
Completely agree with you, and one of the things that you said that really struck me is the importance of, the professionalization of the field and centering consent, making sure we have care providers who understand the importance of individual autonomy, Our daughter will be a really good candidate for the shared decision-making agreement, which is an alternative to guardianship, which would really put her in the driver's seat for most of her decision-making with, us serving in an advisory role. And we really want to have that be kind of the philosophical norm around our child as she's, hit this really important transitional age. But you're right, it comes down to this is a hard job and people need to be compensated accordingly.
Right.
And that it saves us money in the long run. When you think about the return on investment for preventative care, for being proactive about managing health conditions, in our case, making sure we negate the risk of aspiration to the best of our abilities, well, then you don't get a pneumonia that lands you in the hospital for days on end.
Right.
If we can be proactive, it's actually much more cost effective, and it frees my husband and I up to be full earners, and we pay property taxes and we pay our health insurance, and we do all the things that you can do when you're able to be a part of the workforce.
Right.
And I want my kid to be able to be a part of the workforce too, and that happens with supports.
Right. And can I just say, it doesn't happen in congregate living situations. It doesn't happen in group homes and nursing homes, and it only happened when you have control over your schedule, over your space, over the people who are helping you.
Right, who work for you.
Yes, who work for you. And it can be such a delicate balance because caregivers, I think it's partially too when we don't pay very well, some of them try to make it up in an emotional connection, and then that ends up being very problematic, right? They want to be part of the family, and I get that, but we've only got so much bandwidth. In fact, Jim had one caregiver who, because I was also caregiving, was a little upset that he was treating me differently than he was treating her. And I'm like, okay, he's married to me, so that's different. It's going to be different.
These are not comparable situations.
Right, but that's where the emotional intelligence comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not paying enough to hire people with that level of understanding, then you're going to get what you get.
It's absolutely true. Yeah, and I hadn't thought about that angle about folks looking for that deep emotional connection out of a professional role. You know, that's not something you see in other professions necessarily.
Right. Well, because people don't see it as a professional role. Mm-hmm. They see it as they're giving up. This particular person reminded us that she could get more elsewhere. And then she was probably right. So it would have been nice to have been paying her enough to say, well, no, you can't really. This is a job like any other job, and you need to act like an employee.
Right. Your boss is not your source of emotional validation.
Right. Exactly.
Hopefully, if you have a healthy workplace.
Yeah, well. Yeah. So, as you look toward her future, what you talked a little bit about the alternative to guardianship. Mm-hmm. What are some other things that she's looking at doing that you're wondering how that's going to work out? You're wondering how the care is going to work out. And do you have any ideas on where to get the care that she's going to need?
Oh, that's a fabulous question, Pat. And it's really one that our family's talking and thinking a lot about right now. Going through New Hampshire Leadership Series, I graduated in 2017, really opened my eyes to the importance of person-centered planning and really centering the needs of an individual in that plan. I mean, we're in a situation where I think sometimes at 14, the future feels really far away. Mm-hmm. And yet, her father and I are already talking about, well, if it's college, how are we going to, so many families, how are we going to do college? And so I draw a lot of hope from the movement in post-secondary ed. I know it's not for everyone, but, for some, there are programs like UNH for You, mm-hmm. or I know Syracuse has some really great options for individuals with disabilities to be supported in the university setting. I know that I just have a feeling like my kid could really thrive in a situation like mm-hmm. that. And I definitely feel firmly that she should have the choice.
Right.
And just like any of her other siblings, she should choose if she wants to go to college or not. And so that being said, I also recognize the constraints of working with a disability at the moment. It's so difficult, particularly the sticky situation with benefits, and if you earn too much, you get disqualified, and if you get married, you can get disqualified. There's a marriage penalty that's not mm-hmm. right at all, and I feel like this is really something that, as my child plans her future, I want to keep the maximum number of options available. And when I think about what she might do for work, like so many families before us, we're thinking about could we pull off a small business? If college isn't in the cards, what can we do to explore those options?
Right.
That being said, I think figuring out the caregiving situation will be a piece of that. Right. It'll be a piece of that for my daughter. It'll be a piece of it for either my in-laws or my own parents. Figuring out how we address caregiving as a culture, I think, is so important. And I do draw a lot of inspiration from the way some of our older Americans are aging and the way that they're insisting on universal design in housing, for example, and finding a place to live that's maybe not a house on an acre, a single family home, but something that's closer to downtown and that maybe has, just is more integrated into the community than maybe some of our more rural locations in the state. And so, yeah, it's all tied together, though. But at the end of the day, she's got to be at the center of it and driving that decision-making process.
Right. And I just realized it must be tricky because Jim worked for VR, still working for VR, and he was talking about starting in the end of middle school, the beginning of high school, starting with transition planning. But I mean, I remember being a freshman in high school, and all I cared about was what I was going to wear that day and how I was going to fix my hair, and like just hanging out for the weekend when I could hang out with my friends and
right. Who I sit with at lunch.
Yeah,
Or, you know.
I mean, what 14-year-old is thinking about only really oddly highly achieving ones, and they shouldn't have to. They should be able to enjoy that crazy, stressful time of being a teenager.
Right. It's hard enough to be a kid today.
And then we expect them to plan out their future at a 14-year-old just seems like an overreach.
I know. That prefrontal cortex is not fully online.
No.
We know this, right? The research is clear.
Even when they graduate high school, that's super. I mean, I remember sending Caitlin to college going with a list of rules and, have fun, but do this, and this to stay safe because, So, was there anything else that you specifically wanted to talk about? I want to make sure that you get all.
Sure. Well, I know when we first met, we were connecting about the joys and the complexity of caregiving. And, I was thinking in preparation for today about there is a lot of joy, too, in being able to do this work. And I was thinking about how fortunate we are to have the time, because caregiving, I think, I heard your episode about inspiration porn with Stella Young's clip, which I just absolutely, I think that is so key to not put people on a pedestal right. and to be realistic about, being a human is hard. Right. and we're not all getting it right all the time. And I just love that that you all referenced to that. And I do feel really fortunate that, I have more time with my kid than a lot of folks. At 14, we still spend a lot of time together. And I feel very fortunate in that respect, and I can be my best self as a caregiver because I have a network of support around me.
Right.
And that's so key, I think, in supporting her as she reaches her full potential. So that I think that there's such a temptation to say, like, every now and then I'll run into people, I could never. And you're just like, that cliche just sets my teeth on edge. Yes, you can. You would. It's just, there's nothing, we're all just, a negative health incident away from this kind of thing and from needing, and we should be looking to each other for support.
Right.
All of us. And so I was thinking about the joys are there any joys of caregiving that bubbled up for you as you were thinking about today?
Oh yeah. I mean, just mostly it's our daughter and her. I'm gonna go. She's really connected with her father, which when she was little, we didn't think that was going to happen because but now she comes and she cares for him. She worried about both of us, which I kind of wish she wouldn't do. But she and her fiance, we've gone on a couple of trips together, the four of us, and it's an incredible feeling to be together with them and to watch them mature and take on the mantle of caregiving and enjoy it, actually. And could we think about? I think about. This is my responsibility and not wanting to put it on other people, but then people love to do it. They love to help out. They love to be connected with someone. It gives you a chance to connect with somebody in this really special way that you don't connect with others on that level. She had a great relationship with her father, but one thing that drives her nuts is, of course, we go out, and inevitably somebody comes and wants to like pat Jim on the head and say, "It's so great to see you out." And Caitlin's like, "I'm just gonna show them now because that's her father."
Right.
I mean, when do you say that to someone's father?
Well, you never should. That's the thing.
It's so great to see you out. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Not treating people in a like paternalistic kind of way should be a standard.
Right. It should be obvious.
Oh, but Caitlin really has developed good instincts, I bet, about the kind of people that she wants to surround herself with too.
Right.
You know?
Right. She has.
Right.
She has.
Yeah, there's a lot of beauty in opening ourselves up to help and support, you know. I mean, and I'm saying that as me as a caregiver. It's so tempting to be like, no, I'm juggling it all. But that really actually does a disservice to the overall needs of our family, because I benefit just as much, if not more, from a network to support me in supporting my kid, you know.
Exactly.
And so I have found it challenging at times. We live in such an independent culture where, you know, it's you and your bootstraps, the end. And but you actually can have much more rich relationships when you open yourself up to the fact that we all need support. And
right, exactly.
Being able to, you know, lean on my friends in a different way. And that's been a gift. You know, it deepens relationships and connection, which I think we're all craving, especially right now.
Yes, especially post-pandemic. Mm-hmm. Well, I think you and I could, like, talk for hours, but unfortunately, I don't think people necessarily want to listen to us for hours.
I would talk to you anytime, Pat.
So, same here. This has been great.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yes.
And maybe we can do it again sometime. Maybe
Absolutely.
talk a little bit more about your professional role next time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we wear so many hats. So
Yes.
I'd love to come in and talk about the benefits of the New Hampshire Leadership Series. And if folks are looking for ways to grow their support network, I'd highly recommend checking out New Hampshire Leadership. We are a program that does training for individuals and families who experience disability, and it's a great time. We're going into an excellent cohort for the year ahead, so we're really excited.
Okay, well, look forward to that
Thank you.
in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Vanessa Blaze, and this was a production of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, produced by Isadora Rodriguez-Legendre and Vanessa Blaze, with many thanks to Josh Hardy and the rest of the crew here at Concord TV. We love to have guests with differing perspectives. These views are personal and do not necessarily represent those of the DD Council.